government, just look at what they do. Can't trust the media, they're all full of lies. Once you know a little bit, all hope in you dies. Live free or die. Live free or die. Live free or die. Live free or die. Two-party system, what the hell is that? Votes just the same, nothing but a crap. They tell you what to think, they control what you see. Why don't you think and heard it on TV? I said live free or die. Live free or die. Live free or die. Live free or die.
Welcome to another engaging edition of Hardfire TV. My name is Cameron Weber. Thank you for watching our program about civil and economic liberties. This will be our April 2025 show. Today we're going to talk about government labor unions. Franklin Delano Roosevelt during the New Deal was against government unions because they would strike or threaten to strike to get more money from the taxpayer. There is no need for government unions because there is no exploitation of government employees by owners of the means of production. The government is supposed to represent the will of the people. This is a timely topic, of course, in that government reforms are occurring in DC right now. For example, the DOGE team would like to downsize the federal workforce to just essential employees and departments and is in the process of attempting this. I'd like to welcome back to Hardfire, Ron Litchman. Ron, welcome back.
Thank you, Cameron. It's good to see you again. It's been a while, and as we were
Ah.
discussing off time, we seem to be dividing our histories in pre-COVID and post-COVID. And
Yeah,
we go back to BC before COVID.
yeah, very much so.
Great to be with you again.
Right. And so welcome back. Ron is an attorney with government experience and is here to help us discuss government labor unions. Right? Right. So
I'd say in full disclosure, I'm a recovered lawyer.
Mm.
But I was assistant corporation counsel of the city of New York during that
Ah,
era,
yeah.
and was chair of the Manhattan Libertarian Party for a couple of years, 2016, 18, I think.
You were at the same time I was chair of the Brooklyn Libertarian Party, and I was a government employee also. I was a civil service employee with the State Department, and I was also a foreign service employee. So we both have enough experience to talk about this. But Ron, I also wanted to ask you about your Substack blog. You're blogging, you're a writer, I don't know if you call yourself an intellectual or what, but you're
Uh,
pundit.
Ron 2.0 version is a Substack. I'm a freelance writer.
Mm.
You'll find me on The Libertarian Light, all one word, lowercase, .substack.com. And
Yeah.
you should see if you get there my series of blogs, which I try to do more frequently than I'm able to do it because I spare my readers stuff that they can see from elsewhere. I try to limit myself to something that is insightful and novel and I haven't heard before. So I do it only sporadically.
Yeah, right. So and you're good at marketing it. I get your periodic updates there, and so
One
when
can always be better at marketing. So
yeah,
all of your viewers are welcome to join me over there. Share
Libertarian
it.
Light. I wanted to ask about Libertarian Light. We joked about this. I don't know if you remember because libertarian's a broad spectrum, right? There's you know, people who want small government, and then people who want anarchy, and then you lean more to and then there's people who think that libertarians actually believe that the government should give out needles and make safe spaces and all that. And then, whereas the right wing libertarians don't believe that, they're law and order. The left wing are more, Democrats. So when you say when libertarian light, you're a little bit more conservative on the conservative side, correct?
I chose my title knowingly as a bit of a ambiguity or something of a pun.
Ah,
Uh, I have been criticized or challenged for not being libertarian enough.
uh,
So I titled my pieces Libertarian Light, knowing that some of our former colleagues or our current colleagues would consider that LITE, light,
right.
as in Bud Light. Of course, that went off some other deep end. Uh, but
So,
my notion, my aspiration was libertarian light, like a beacon
you're
of
right.
a lighthouse, but it is admittedly ambiguous.
Very cool. And not ironically, but the one of the last shows we did was at the Brooklyn Library, I believe. We did it about trade barriers and the you were arguing for trade barriers against China at that time, and I was arguing for free trade, the libertarian, free trade, classical liberal free trade. You had trade barriers for nationalistic reasons, and now that's actually happening, trade barriers for nationalistic reasons. And so I would say, great. I mean, but let's get rid of the income tax and have trade tariffs only. Right? Get rid of the income tax. And I mean, that's the way the federal government was until
I
World
haven't,
War One.
no, I haven't thought that through. Um,
Yeah.
that gets us, we should be talking about unions, but
Mm.
but this is
We're about to start. We're about to start on the unions.
fun
Yeah.
too. Um, if we get rid of the income tax, how
Uh,
how much of a tax burden or a tariff burden might that have to be? Obviously, it's a regressive kind of tax, uh, and then those of a certain age have to wonder that if essentially a sales tax or a sales tax type burden is imposed across the whole economy, what does that do to somebody's retirement accounts?
yeah.
That
Okay.
that, co-
Stock markets. Okay. Yeah. Very good. The stock. Well, we're learning
that
now.
might be a subject for another discussion.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll do that another time. So let's get back to the labor unions. I'd like to start out by pointing out the problem. First, we see, I'm going to put up a graph. We see that the federal government employment has increased dramatically in the last several years. So you can see a big blip during the COVID era. You can't see this, but a big blip during the COVID era. And then we see a slight downtick with the Doge activities right now. The Department of Government Efficiency is laid off or is attempting to lay off hundreds of thousands of government employees. There's 2.3 million federal government employees, and the current administration is attempting to lay off hundreds of thousands of them, which is a mere blip. So it's probably not that surprising that the recent presidential elections were a backlash against the large rise of the federal state in our lives. What do you think of that?
Well, I think there's some truth in much of what you say, and I think the last election, the election of Trump, was a backlash
Hmm.
on a number of things, including the perceived perceived by me
Right.
in, oh, aggravated intrusion of the federal government in every aspect of
Yeah.
citizens' lives.
During the
Um,
COVID era, which was what we're talking about. Yeah.
well, that statistic actually surprised me. The government employment shot up during COVID. I thought they were all staying home.
Uh, no, I'm not saying they went to the office. No, I'm saying the
The
people on
government
the
hired more.
payroll, on the work, yeah, the people on the payroll has increased.
Yeah, well, that maybe, but I would actually not so much quarrel, but nuance your statement of the problem. And I'll hark back to my libertarian
Yeah, yeah.
roots, and I'll say I'm I don't know that unions are the cause of big government. I'd suggest that big government is the cause of big unions.
Uh-huh.
Consider that of course, obviously, if we had fewer than 2.3 million um, government employees, we would have fewer than, I believe it's what, 800,000, or
Um,
is that too low a number, of unionized government workers?
oh, yeah, yeah, about 800,000.
At 800,000.
But keep in mind that for every government employee, there's two or three contractors. So,
Oh,
that's,
the government's for, I mean, for sure, and I will get to New York State is even more egregious in this.
yeah.
Uh,
Our
the
next show is going to be on New York State. This show
for
is
for
about
each,
federal government.
for each actual government employee, the political weight is the vote of the employee, the spouse, the children, the nieces and nephews, and
That's right.
a
And the
community
campaign contributions.
campaign contributions. Uh, so that, but if we had smaller government and fewer employees, we'd have fewer union members, and their political leverage,
Right.
which depends solely on numbers, would diminish. Now, let me telescope back to Franklin Roosevelt,
Thank you.
because his famous 1937 letter uh, states that he's opposed to the what does he go public sector unions, or unions of
Yeah.
public sector employees,
Yeah.
because principally he's concerned about strikes. He doesn't see that there's a place for government employees or unions to be striking against the government, because that's a affront to we the people. Far good enough as far as it goes. But I think it also provided a blueprint, which now, decades later, has come to pass, where Franklin Roosevelt essentially said, well, government employees don't negotiate against their assistant deputy
Administrative.
assistant. They need to they really negotiate against Congress, because
Mm,
Congress makes the rules. And
exactly. Appropriates
uh,
money. Yeah.
therefore, the insight is, the roadmap is, go lobby to Congress. And that's exactly what we have. We have
Yes.
we have politically active, politically effective,
Yeah.
politically leveraging organized government employees who, by force of numbers, because the government is as big as it is,
Yeah.
can sway elections and influence elections and
That's right.
influence individual votes in the Congress. And as well as I foreshadow, even more so in the state of New York, uh, and perhaps other well unionized states. So
Uh,
Roosevelt was right, and yet, uh, what did we call it some time ago? A failure of imagination.
ah,
He didn't foresee
uh,
that the 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 advent of unions, even to do the functions that he seemed to acknowledge or acquiesce in, to express their views. He didn't say how, on working conditions, grievance procedures,
yeah.
fair treatment of employees. He didn't quite see how that's going to become a political force,
Ah,
where the unions now can influence elections. Now, elections have consequences, as we are frequently told, and we're first told by President Obama. And the consequence of this
executive
last,
orders. You're talking about everyone does these executive orders now, right?
yes,
Yeah.
well, the consequence of this election is you no longer have a president willing to walk the picket line as
Right.
Biden did during the Ford strike,
Exactly.
and you have a president who has issued an executive order this week, which is a bit cryptic in the reading, and I confess I haven't done all my lawyerly research on it, but it seems to abrogate collective bargaining agreements for certain but a large number of federal government agencies, which he nominates as uh, tasked with national security and civil.
Exactly. Exactly. That's we
So,
talked about the growth of government is
right.
because the growth of the national security state.
Um, or, well, allegedly. I mean,
Allegedly.
his definition, Trump's definition of national security and the government policy may be rather broad. But as a counterpoint, and I'm amused by uh, the moves on check on the chessboard. Biden, during his last weeks, as I recall, granted in the rubric of amending a collective bargaining agreement, granted fellow employees the right, mind you, not to show up for work for 5 years. Uh, and if I'm mistaken a bit on the technicalities of that, that was the public impression.
That's called the Zoom class. So he codified the Zoom class.
It's
That's pretty,
codified the Zoom class,
that's
right?
pretty funny. So,
And
but Ron, the interesting thing, I have a dual PhD in history and economics, right? And I studied the New Deal was my period, Roosevelt, and I didn't know that Roosevelt was against unions. I mean, against public. He was definitely for private unions, but in his rhetoric, that he was against public sector unions, which to me was he made me think he wasn't so stupid after all.
well,
Sorry about that.
I suppose if you're going to be slightly more generous, you can give him the broken clock award. But he wasn't wrong about everything.
I never met him, so I have nothing to
I
say
don't know
about it.
either, but there was much on his table. During all
Yeah, there was.
we had a
Roosevelt was right. Let's look at the inequality created by government labor unions. The Bureau of Labor Statistics report shows government workers make 40% more than private industry employees. Let me say that again. Government workers make 40% more than everyone else.
I read that statistic.
Talk about bargaining power.
It is not for me to gainsay the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I say them. Um, I suppose we have to, take it arguendo that it's an apples to apples comparison. That
What it is
that
the salaries and benefits. The labor unions get more benefits than private sector.
this is in the aggregate on the whole,
Yeah,
the whole private sector versus the whole public sector.
yes, sir. Yeah, that is from the Bureau of Labor
Okay. I mean,
Statistics.
are there any skewing factors? I mean, teachers, firefighters, first responders, and cops uh, have, I will say, loaded term.
Those are all essential services. That's exactly why they shouldn't be striking. Exactly.
Well, striking aside, but they are also the sectors that have the notorious reputation for having particularly generous retirements and benefits.
That's
Now, if we
right.
took those out of the statistics, perhaps it wouldn't be quite so
Right, exactly.
unequal. But okay.
Yeah, Ron, that's a good point. There's a very big debate in economics about inequality
Mm.
and and the inequality the inequality figures don't take into consideration non-salaried benefits, nor do they take into consideration transfers, welfare state transfers. So yeah, it's all in the statistics. But anyway, I'm going to put up a chart that shows the average salary and benefits. Federal government employee average salary is 100 and benefits 106,000. Private sector with no college degree is 50,000. And private sector with college degree is 89,000. So federal government employees make twice as much as people without college degrees, and they make 25% more than people with college degrees. So that gets to your right. You don't need a college degree for firefighting and for police now, but despite that, they make more money than people with college degrees.
Well, I suppose if we had a free market for labor, knowing that statistic, then many more people would be applying for government jobs
Well, of
because
course, everybody wants a
as, get,
government job.
as soon as they get hired, they get a 40% boost.
Yes,
I
sure.
don't know if we're seeing that in the marketplace of labor, but but I certainly spot the point and not that reluctantly. The
So how can we say that the government represents the will of the people if government employees make so much money than the people?
Oh well, but wait, well, okay.
They're the anointed elite.
The will of the people expressed by Congress has provided that government employees make more money than the average people. So the problem here is Congress.
Yeah, yeah. Congress is the problem. The Congress, uh, the ironic thing is that families don't like to run up too much debt in general. People like to live within their means in general, but Congress does not live within its means. You'll look at we're $36 trillion in debt, which is $100,000 per person. And if you look at the unfunded government labor union benefits, which are 14 trillion, so Congress has promised to government employees 14 trillion more dollars than it has budgeted for. So what we're doing is we're talking about the will of the people, and if government labor unions are supposed to be for the people, well, then they're not, because we just pass this debt on to future generations. So future generations live in worse economic conditions than they would have had we lived within our means, had Congress not had not given all this generous benefits to the government employees. So that works out to $126,000 in debt per person in the United States. $126,000 in debt per person in the United States. A lot of it, which is due to these labor union benefits.
Well, we have been warned long, long ago.
30 years I've been studying this stuff.
250 years ago, Ben Franklin said to us, um, this republic will work until the people figure out how to vote money to themselves.
Oh, yeah. Or he also said, what'd you get? You got a republic if you can keep it.
You keep it, but if you bankrupt it, you're going to lose it. And
Yeah.
I
Well,
think,
you knew that the US government debt was downgraded about a year and a half, 2 years
oh, yeah.
ago?
Well, it- as a direct result of a dust up over the debt limit, when it looked as though the government might actually, and some were threatening to actually default on government debt. That downgrade wasn't directly related to the debt being as large as it is now. It wasn't as large yet as it is now. I think what is it, 120% of GDP.
Exactly, which is twice the amount. If you wanted to get into the European Union monetary regime, you had to have 60% or less debt debt to GDP. We're
Yeah.
twice that. We're 120%. We
But
wouldn't
the
even be allowed into the European Union. How terrible is that?
blessings of having the reserve currency.
Which is we did a show about that, right? We did a show about that. Ron Litchman and Cameron Weber. We talked about trade barriers and the international reserve currency.
So,
Yeah.
and I'm looking at a timer here. We're
Okay, we've got about 2 or 3 minutes left.
well, uh, I hearken to my libertarian roots. Unions are a dislocation uh, in 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 committing the federal government to its core mission um, with and the unions are a sort of an institutional adversary relationship
Yeah.
with the government and with
Yeah.
people. However, I maintain
But by definition, I mean, it
by definition,
sets up that structure.
by
Yeah.
definition, a union is a special interest group that wants more for its members from anybody else. You very seldom hear about growing the pie and producing
Right.
more for everybody. However,
Exactly.
having said all of that, the big government made the unions. I don't believe the unions made the big government. Uh,
Yeah.
and and unions, by virtue of their numbers in a big government,
Yeah.
and leverage themselves into an extraordinary, maybe disproportionate political leverage and lobby the Congress, as Franklin Roosevelt seemed to allow. Uh,
Ah,
they're, they're rather generous benefits. So,
okay. So Roosevelt was Janus face. He, on the one hand, he said, and then on the
yeah,
other. I'm not, I've never met him, rest in peace. But my grandfather, he used to complain about Roosevelt. So I'm just following in his footsteps. But so we have this AGFA, the union, the AGFA union, which is very strong against what's going on in DC now. So I just wanted to put up this graphic to show that the government labor unions are fighting, even when the current administration said it will give you 9 months pay and benefits, you know, so you can go and do something productive. Uh, the labor unions are even fighting that, right? They're fighting the ability of their own employees, their own members to get 9 months pay in advance. All right,
yeah,
so we have just 1 minute left. We have shown that FDR was right, half of them was right, that there should not be public employee labor unions, as the unions exploit the taxpayers and create inequality. In our next program, we'll be talking more specifically about the unions in the state of New York. I'd like to thank Ron for participating in today's discussion. Thank you, Ron.
it's been a pleasure to be with you. Good to see you again.
Thank you for watching Hardfire TV. Each of our episodes appears 6 times monthly on the Brooklyn Free Speech Network, which is available citywide and streams through the BRIC Arts Media House. We have more than 75 programs about classical liberal ideas on our YouTube channel, or libertarian light ideas. We're shedding light on libertarian ideas. Just search for Hardfire TV and Brooklyn Free Speech. See you next time. Thank you.
Next time.
What